You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we have spoken at length about this person who was wrongly deported to El Salvador, even though the Trump administration was ordered not to, and ultimately just chalked it up to an administrative error. Obviously, a major national story here. We now have a move by the judge in this case that we have been waiting for. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, federal court judge in Maryland just said, and I quote, "This was an illegal act," close quote. And Judge Shines just ordered the Trump administration to return somebody that they unlawfully and unconstitutionally deported to El Salvador, a young man named Arbo Garcia, and she gave the Trump administration until 11:59 p.m. on April 7 to bring him back, period, full stop. So, of course, this will set up a potential battle if the Trump administration either declines to do so or misses that deadline. But I'll tell you, this story was so dramatic because what we learned, Brian, is this young man, Mr. Garcia, actually fled El Salvador in 2011. Why? Well, the court papers reveal that he was being threatened by some gang members. They were threatening to kill him and they were extorting his parents. So he actually fled gang violence. He came to the United States. He was a legal resident here. And in 2019, an immigration judge issued an order saying Mr. Garcia may not be deported to El Salvador. So, of course, without a warrant, without any evidence, without any lawful cause, ICE agents swooped him up, stuffed him on a plane to El Salvador with several hundred Venezuelan immigrants that the Trump administration says, oh, they're just dangerous gang members. So we're going to basically violate the Fifth Amendment due process rights that they all enjoy and just send them to a prison in El Salvador. Well, now this case was heard in court today, federal court in Maryland, and Judge Shines said not only was this, quote, an illegal act, but she went on to say, quote, from the moment he, Garcia, was seized, it was unconstitutional. There was no warrant. There was no complaint. There was no indictment. There was no evidence, even though in court, these third-rate DOJ lawyers kept saying, well, Judge, he was a gang member. And she said, quote, that's just chatter. You have no evidence. You need to bring evidence into a court of law. I'll tell you, it seemed like Judge Shines was just not having any of the arguments being made by these DOJ lawyers. So now we will see if the Trump administration complies with the order, gets Mr. Garcia on a plane, gets him out of that El Salvadoran prison, and returns him to the United States by just before midnight on the 7th.
So that's the date. That's the deadline. We will have an answer here on or before April 7th here. Is that correct?
Yeah, by 11:59 p.m. on April 7th. If he's not back in the United States, I have a feeling there's going to be hell to pay.
And what does that look like? I mean, what happens in the instance that the administration opts not to comply? Or, for example, that they lean on some excuse like, oh, well, he's outside of our jurisdiction, and so there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, hell to pay is a layman's term for contempt. Brian, right here in our backyard outside of Washington, D.C., there's another case being litigated where Judge Boasberg is moving in the direction of holding Trump administration officials in contempt of court for violating his orders to turn planes around that were carrying Venezuelan immigrants who were unconstitutionally being deported by the Trump administration. So here we go again. It looks like Judge Shines will have to contend with possibly initiating contempt proceedings against Trump administration officials if Mr. Garcia is not brought back in a timely manner. What will that look like? Well, ironically, she will give the Trump administration officials notice an opportunity to be heard. Those are their due process rights before she moves into a contempt hearing to see if they should be held in contempt and punished up to and including with a prison term. So it is all going to come to a head in this case very quickly.
And Glenn, I want to dig into that for just a quick moment, but I do want to take a quick beat here to let the viewers know that we've just passed episode 500 of The Legal Breakdown. So a note from Glenn and I just to say thank you for tuning in. I know that there are a lot of different places where you can get your news, a lot of different sources that you trust for your news, and the fact that you're giving us a few minutes each day to get our take on things and to follow along with what's happening on the legal front really does mean a lot. And the fact that we've been able to go for 500 500 episodes is a testament to the fact that you've been willing to listen. So we really thank you for that. We thank you for the time and the trust that you've placed in us, and are looking forward to 500 more.
And Brian, if I can add, we will undoubtedly have another 500 episodes that we will need to do in the coming years, because I'm sure Donald Trump will have at least 500 or 1,000 unlawful and unconstitutional acts that we will need to break down, to translate from legalese to English, and to, provide to our viewers so they know what's really going on, because what we get to do is actually combat the propaganda, the disinformation, the outright lies by Trump and company, because they're forever trying to fool the gullible, deceive the American people. Not that they're all gullible. It's only the gullible ones who tend to believe Trump, but deceive the American people about what's really going on the legal landscape. So I appreciate the partnership, and I'm looking forward to the next 500 episodes.
Well, and just to build on that for just one more moment, I think that what we're doing by being able to take deep dives into this stuff is really changing the way that people consume news as it relates to legal issues. So often we've seen on mainstream media how really it's just a 30-second soundbite, and then they expect people to understand the legal landscape after that. That was never very fulfilling for somebody like me to be able to watch, and certainly not to be able to understand. So hopefully getting 10, 15, 20 minutes of this stuff so that you really understand what's happening on a daily basis has been helpful for folks who are watching. So if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe to both of our channels. I'll put the links right here on the screen. That's the best way to support our work, the best way to stay on top of what's happening, and the best way to support independent media more broadly. Okay, jumping back in here, Glenn, what happens in the event that Trump and the administration actually can't get a hold of this person? Because, look, I understand that we have a partnership with this prison system, this high security prison system, CCOT down in El Salvador, but really we don't have jurisdiction at this prison. I mean, this is a maximum security prison in the middle of El Salvador. And so what happens in the event that they say, you know what, he came through our doors, he's ours now?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I suspect the judge will say, okay, you're having some logistical problems, some diplomatic problems coordinating with the authorities down in El Salvador. I'm going to place you under oath right now, and I'm going to examine you. I'm going to ask you questions about exactly, precisely what the impediments are and how you intend to overcome them so you can comply with my court order, even if you need another day or two. So let's create a record of it. Let's put it under oath, because if you're not telling me the truth, or you fall down on the promises you make to this court to move out expeditiously, in the direction of bringing Mr. Garcia back, who you illegally and unconstitutionally deported, then there's going to be trouble. Then I'm going to have to move on to contempt proceedings for you and every other Trump administration official. So it might be, Brian, that there are some roadblocks, some impediments that have to be worked through. But let's pay attention to consistency for a minute, because down in the litigation in Washington, D.C., on what is largely a similar, if not identical issue, Venezuelans being unconstitutionally deported down to the same prison in El Salvador, you know what the attorneys went in and told Judge Boasberg? Judge, we don't want to upset the strong diplomatic relations we have in place with the authorities in El Salvador, with the president of El Salvador, because we are cooperating hand in glove in this endeavor to, use this El Salvador prison to house these dangerous gang members. So you're in lockstep, you're working closely, hand in glove, but when you are ordered to return somebody that you illegally, even if you claim, wink, wink, it was mistakenly deported to the same prison, now, oh my goodness, we just can't pull it together diplomatically to bring one person back. Come on now, guys.
I think that's perfectly put. And we'll see, by the way, if a judge is willing to accept the kind of nonsense that's being put forward by the Trump administration officials here. With that said, then, is there a world in which if that person is not willing to tell the truth, that their own law license, for example, can be put on the line?
It could be. And, if we kind of pull back to the 30,000-foot overview here, Brian, what these third-rate DOJ lawyers are going into court every day and arguing, they're arguing that unconstitutional conduct is actually constitutional. This is really Orwellian, 1984 government doublespeak that's going on. I was a federal prosecutor for 30 years. I swore an oath of loyalty to the Constitution, not to the president. I wasn't a mouthpiece for the president. I was actually a mouthpiece for the people of the United States. More precisely, I argued in favor of and in order to protect and promote the interests of the people of the United States, not a presidential administration or a president. These attorneys should be held accountable for what they're saying in court, because I suggest much of what they are arguing is an abdication of their responsibilities to represent the interests of the American people. And I don't know how many of these clowns, Pam Bondi, the ugly law firm over there at DOJ of Bondi, Blanche, and Bove, how many of these attorneys are going to go into court and demean themselves for Bondi and for Donald Trump? But guess what? I suspect they're going to run out of them, because the overwhelming majority of attorneys at the Department of Justice are honest, ethical, honorable people who take their oath of loyalty to the Constitution deadly seriously. So I think the well of unethical lawyers at DOJ is going to run dry sooner or later.
And finally, let's finish off with this. And I don't want to belabor this point, but you had mentioned that the deadline is 11:59 p.m. on April 7th. We also know that the Trump administration has been engaged in delay tactics from now until the ends of the earth. And so my question here is there any way that the Trump team could seek to delay this even further, or is April 7th the hard and fast deadline?
The judge made it clear. When you say 11:59, I think you're sending a signal that I'm not saying 11:59 and 15 seconds. I
Right.
expect you to comply with this order to the letter of the time that I have set. So, again, I don't think they should test the resolve of Judge Shinez, but we'll see if they do.
All right. Well, we will, of course, stay on top of this. We'll watch to make sure if the Trump administration does opt to comply with this court order or blows past it, both of which are highly likely at this point. So we have big news on the horizon here. For those who are watching, if you want to follow along with this story and other legal news, again, please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to support our work as we head toward another 500 episodes of The Legal Breakdown. I'll put the links to both of our channels right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.